Good morning. You all came out on this cold, blustery day. Yay. And hello there. Those of you who are live streaming, welcome. So the theme this month is release. Let's take a nice deep breath together. You got it. That's it. We're releasing. It's also November, so that's our month of gratitude. So certainly there is joy and appreciation in releasing old beliefs, old ideas that are holding us back from living fully and completely. So we can tie those two together. And so I thought I'd start in a little different place today. How many of you have heard of Plato's cave allegory? Yeah, a few of you? Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah, well, for those of you who haven't, or just as a reminder, 2,400 or so years ago, right? Plato came up with this interesting idea to teach his students about how illusions very often substitute for truth. And so the idea is that there is a cave, a dark cave, and there are some prisoners who are chained up in this dark cave, and they're sort of, their heads are braced so they can only see forward. They can't turn their heads around. And then behind them is a fire that, adds some warmth and light into the cave. And between the fire and the prisoners, there's a walkway. And people who were working there walk back and forth all day, carrying objects. And so think about it, what are the prisoners seeing? The shadows. They're seeing because the light hits the people, and all they're seeing are the shadows on the wall. They can't turn around and see that it's a person making that. So, and as shadows are projected, they get elongated, they get distorted. But because they've been there all of their lives since childhood, they don't know anything else. They think this is real. Like, this is reality. The shadows are reality. I mean, they have nothing to compare it to, no frame of reference. So this is what reality is to them. So Plato's mentor, Socrates, takes this allegory a step further, and he offers this idea that, okay, so what if one of the prisoners were released from this cave? Suddenly, unchained, released from the cave. Well, first of all, if they've been down there for all of their lives, there must be like moles. Their eyes would not be able to adjust right away to the bright light. So it was like they'd be blinded when they walked into the sunlight. So they couldn't even open their eyes at first. And so it would take a little while for them to adjust to the brightness. And then when they finally open their eyes and they see a real human being, it's like, what is this? It just must be mind-blowing. And they might be a little frightened at first, a little disoriented. And then after a while, once they relax into the awareness that this is real. Not only are they seeing people, but they're seeing trees and flowers, and they're hearing birds singing, and water, and rivers, and the sky with clouds and stars and the sun. And so they're going to want to go back and tell their buddies who are still prisoners in the cave about this new reality, the actual reality. They're going to tell them, oh, the shadows, that's not reality. That's, if this is just shadows, you don't know. It's a whole other world out there. How do you think the buddies are going to react to that? How do your fundamentalist relatives behave or respond when you tell them about unity or new thought? Kind of about that same way, right? So they're going to think he's nuts. And first of all, because his eyes are adjusted to the light, when he goes back into the cave, it's going to take a while for him to get readjusted to the dark, and they're going to think he's blinded. So he's been hurt, he's been blinded. I don't want to go with him. Not only that, but he is nuts. I'm not going. And so Socrates explains that this is how philosophers, which is kind of their word for, those who are awakened, those who see a higher reality. This is what it's like. It's like the freed prisoner who comes to realize that the world of shadows, it's just an illusion. And that there's a brighter, different reality. They see a higher level of reality. And meanwhile, the inmates in the cave, don't even want to leave their prison, right? No, that's all they know. They can't see a better world. And they're probably frightened and suspicious of anything other than what they already know. So we can see this illusion, this allegory, in terms of the illusion of separation. The illusion of separation. And the majority of humanity is imprisoned in a belief of separation, that we are only human, that this three-dimensional world is all that there is. And then when somebody dies, that's it, they're just gone. The belief that God is outside of them and that he is capricious, answers some people's prayers and not others. Their reality is that they're separate from others. Others are different, either inferior to them or superior to them. Their reality is that they're separate from their good, and therefore are living in a world of lack and limitation and must struggle and compete, in order to get their share. For most people, their reality is that they are, victims of the winds of fate, victim of circumstance, powerless. And they either need to adjust to the idea that they're powerless or forcibly take power from someone else. That's kind of how we see a lot of the world. Not here. Not you. But it's kind of how, that seems like reality. But is it just shadows in a dark cave? The illusion is the dark cave where we believe the shadows are real. But the shadows are only reflections of our fearful thinking. They're only reflections of our fearful thinking. And when we're introduced to a new idea that there's a whole other world of light, of omnipresent love, of omnipresent good, that wholeness and well-being and abundance are here. They're at hand, and they're just waiting for us to accept it in order to blossom in our lives. When we first are introduced to that idea, it's like, I don't know. That just sounds, I don't know. Magical thinking, maybe? Not sure. Because what we've experienced, what we've known, and I'm talking about, the majority of people, is illusion, separation, powerlessness, this roller coaster ride of happiness and unhappiness. That's reality, right? That's the standard. That's what everybody is experiencing. So that must be real. But not. It's just shadows reflected on a wall of a dark cave. And we just haven't seen the light yet. We haven't yet fully experienced the light. We haven't yet fully experienced our power and our oneness. We haven't yet fully had the experience of that indwelling presence. Well, some of us have. In fact, I think probably the majority of us here have probably had the experience, at least, some degree of this world of light, of infinite love, of omnipresent peace. And it's like, oh, I get it. And then we sneak down into that cave, into the world of shadows. And then we go, oh, no, whoa, wait. Omnipresent good, omnipresent love, divine here. And then we get kind of sucked into the shadow. And so we kind of go back and forth. Why? Because there's huge resistance to accepting a different paradigm, particularly one that's not obvious. And it's not obvious, It's not always obvious. And our ego wants to keep us safe, Our ego does not want us to explore any other possibility. Doesn't want us to go there. We don't know how that other world works. We know how this world works. So it wants to kind of keep us safe. But if we persist, if we activate our power of courage, if we rise above the voice of the ego and open to the possibility that there is a greater reality, a whole limitless world opens up to us. And when we adjust to this, when we adjust our eyes to this bright world, when we become acclimated to this, finally, we can release the shadows, leave the cave behind. What freedom! What freedom! Ernest Holmes, who, Science of Mind, most of you know that's the sister organization to Unity. He wrote, when the illusion of opposites disappears from our mental perception and we come to realize that we are whole, we shall be made whole. So, how do we get out of the cave in the first place? How do we get out of there? Well, I think it involves a lot of trust. We got to trust that voice of the divine, that inner divine voice, our inner wisdom. Trust it and, move forward even though we really can't see completely. Move forward in the dark. And I think, having a guide is good. Having a guide, someone who's been there, someone who lives in a world of light, someone who lives in that omnipresent peace and that omnipresent love. And this could be, the master teachers whatever you resonate to, Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, Green Tara, any of the mystics or, poets that you resonate with. Spiritual leaders, teachers, prayer team leaders, your mentors, your spiritual teachers. Spiritual leaders can, point to what's possible, show you what's possible, and maybe even, tell you how to get there. But you need to trust your own inner wisdom and take the journey. Step forward into the unknown. Right? And then when you begin to see a brighter, more expansive reality, give your eyes a little time to adjust. Breathe. Let's all breathe together. Breathe into it. Relax into it. One step at a time. Take it slow. And then when You're fully acclimated. It's time to release the illusion of the shadows, which is not always easy to do, as I was mentioning earlier, because of a little thing called chemicalization. Ever heard of chemicalization? That's Charles Fillmore's word, his term for this phenomena. And he says about it, a condition in the mind that is brought about by the conflict that takes place when a high spiritual realization contacts an old error state of consciousness. Whenever a new spiritual idea is introduced into the mind, some negative belief is disturbed and it resists. Darn. Oh, so annoying. Hate it when that happens, yeah. I know. So it's not really the belief that resists, it's the ego, right? It's the ego that does not want us to really grow. I don't know. That's too scary out there. Let's come back here. We know this. It wants to keep us safe. Or it could be an unhealed shadow self. An unhealed shadow self that has some investment in keeping things the way that they are now, regardless of how painful or dark that might be. There's some gain there for it. So we want to take a look at that. So again, consistent practice, consistent spiritual practice, like meditation, journaling, working with the 12 powers is really good with this. Forgiveness, forgiving others, forgiving ourselves. Working with the shadow self, identifying, embracing, healing that shadow self. And by the way, if you want to do that kind of work, I've actually recorded a guided meditation about meeting the shadow self and healing the shadow self. It's free to you. It's on my website, which is breakthrough2.com. You can just download it and give yourself a good half hour or so to sit down and work with that. All of these are helpful in helping us to work through that chemicalization process, to work through it, to really, kind of get to that place where we are okay, where our ego's saying, okay, it's okay, I get it, this is all right, this is okay, I'm feeling safe now, I can grow a little bit, I can be here, and then we release the old paradigm and open to a new reality. The only reality, the reality that we are infinite divine beings expressing inherently good, inherently love, inherently peace, inherently whole, inherently joyous, creative, divine, amazing beings. That's the reality we want to walk into, step into, and begin to embrace. So